Halstead Stone, Chester, South Carolina. Served president of the State Medical Association in 1980 and 81. And this interview is being conducted at the Omni Hotel on April 23rd, 1993 by Dr. Laurie Brown and Alan Brown at the Omni Hotel, and it's during the 145th annual meeting of the South Carolina Medical Association. And Dr. Halstead, I want you to just talk about anything that you would like to talk about, but I'm going to ask you some sort of specific questions, and anything that you don't want to answer, say so.
I'll take the fifth, yeah.
You just take the fifth. Take the fifth. First thing I'm going to ask you about was, of course, where you were born in your early childhood, who your parents were, and anything that you can tell me about your sort of family of origin.
I was born in Chester, South Carolina. Scotch-Irish parents who were original founders of the Presbyterian Church in Chester County in 1787. And I was one of the few doctors in the family. Most of them were either lawyers in the insurance business or in some farm. They ran the last working plantation in Chester County.
And you, did you have any sisters and brothers?
I have a twin brother.
Twin brother.
Right. And we are unidentical. And he's in the insurance business now in Chester.
Well, tell me a little bit about your early education, just sort of anything that you can think about, where you got your undergraduate education, any early influences in your life that you can think of, just sort of how and why you decided to become a physician, you know?
I had always, coming up through high school, our old family doctor had always been a real close family, and he had a lot of influence, Dr. George Hennis, and I admired him very much. And after I finished high school, I was sent to the Southern. That was not my choice of schools, but I really appreciate the fact now that my parents were smart enough to realize that I was a little too wild to go to a regular school, and that because of locking the gates at night, I did study, and I was able to get into medical school.
I guess that's why Tucker Weston is so proud of you. Went to Citadel.
Then from the Citadel on to the medical school here in Charleston, and then I had a year's internship at the Medical College of Virginia in Richmond, and came back to Chester to practice because I was going to have to go in the Army very shortly, and did go in and served in Korea. And I came back to Chester to kind of get my feet on the ground, and just sunk my roots down in the state.
Been there ever since.
Yes.
Now, how do you decide to choose your particular field of medicine?
Well, I do family practice, and up until about 5 years ago, I used to deliver babies, and that was one of the most satisfying parts of it, was to take care of basically the whole family. You deliver them and see them on up through the years, and I guess I used to deliver about 200 babies a year. And then when I finally decided I was old enough, I didn't need to have the phone ringing all night, I stopped. But I think some people are suited to doing one particular type thing. But I'd get a little bit bored doing just one thing. And not knowing what was coming in the door next was always what to look forward to.
A lot to look forward to, and I'm sure that it was a really rewarding practice, wasn't it?
Well,
isn't it?
It still is.
It still is.
Because I'm still practicing.
Yes, sir. Now, can you tell me a little bit, well, who did you marry, and again about your family?
I married Mary Jo Turner, she was from Spartanburg. She was over in a wedding in Cheston. I met her and we became very smitten. And so we married and we have 2 children. The oldest one is senior county executive with the State Development Board in Columbia. And the youngest one is in family practice in Cheston.
Mm-hmm. What are their names?
Hal, Junior, and Sam.
Hal, Junior, and Sam. All right. Do you remember sort of how you first became involved in what was say organized medicine and the medical societies, medical association, etc.?
Well, I guess originally that I was the youngest one at home, so they always elected me the delegate to the state association. So I'd come down and sit on the hard seats and go back and report to them. And got to be real good friends with Dr. Roderick McDonald from Rock Hill, who was past state president, and all. At Dr. McDonald's urging, I was elected counselor, and then worked on up from council to the chairman of council and state president.
Yes, sir. And you remember before you became president, while you were on council, and I know it's hard to separate things, but what were some of the major issues that we were facing back at that time?
Well,
do you remember?
Some of the same ones we face today, but we were worried about access to care. We were worried about the cost of medicine and the fact that insurance was so high, and it still, of course, is even higher. We were beginning the PSRO, and in fact, the House of Delegates voted not to have a foundation and not to be involved in PSRO. And by a very close vote on council, we decided to go ahead and set it up anyway. And I think that was very far-sighted at the time, because if we hadn't have done it, then they would have had somebody else do it, and this way we were able to control it. The other thing that was coming up was Governor Riley's intent to put civilians on all boards, people who were not in medicine. So I spent a good part of my time when I was chairman of council working with Governor Riley to work out a way where we could still, he had to nominate, but he was going to let us elect the people from the districts to go on the board of medical examiners, provided we wouldn't say anything about putting a non-medical person on the board.
Right.
And there was some resistance to that, but we got it through, and it's worked out very well over the years.
And during your term as president, along about then, wasn't there some change in the meetings and the type meetings that the state association had?
Yes, I can remember going back to the old Ocean Forest years ago, and we used to meet at Myrtle Beach, and the House of Delegates came in and met one afternoon and the next morning, and then the educational part started the next afternoon, and it would be, the House of Delegates would be full, and by the time the House of Delegates was over, maybe it wouldn't be 30 people there for the educational part. So we decided that really was a waste, and if we split the House of Delegates from the first day to the third day, and then put an educational program in between, that we could better serve the membership. And we worked very hard and very diligently on that, and we also got it moved here to Charleston because we felt like that would be a better drawing card. And we've been coming to Charleston ever since. But it has, we were able to talk to specialist societies into having meetings with us. We raised the attendance from about 150 to about 450, 500 doctors.
that's been a big improvement, hasn't it, over,
Yes, sir.
over these years?
And the one thing that we wanted to do was to have it so it costs nothing to come, so that it would cost the physician, the doctor his time and what it would cost him to be away from his practice, but we didn't want him to have to pay to actually come to the
Right.
meeting, to any type of registration fee.
And that has been nice, and I think that's been a drawing card over the years, really. Now, during your presidency, I think that, as I recall, your real theme was membership is unity for strength.
Right.
And that still holds today, doesn't it?
Yes, it certainly does, because if we had everybody as a member, one of the things that would happen to us, we would go over to the House to testify on a bill, and they would say, particularly several people on the House Medical Affairs Committee would say, but you don't represent all the doctors in the state. And so we had to tell them we represented most of the practicing physicians in the state. And we had gotten the statistics down so that we said that we could tell them that we represented 70% of the practicing physicians. Not always salaried physicians, but physicians that were out in practice. But that was one of the things they kept throwing up to us, and
Right.
that was one of the reasons for doing, for this particular thing.
I'm still a little leery of saying that the number of physicians that we have in the state who are not members of the medical association, well, this counts a lot of people who are in academic medicine or in training. There's a lot of people who you wouldn't
Well,
expect to be.
what they would throw at us was a medical exam, board of medical examiner said, we have so many physicians licensed in this state. But there were a lot of people who practiced elsewhere that had a South Carolina license.
Yeah.
That also had a license in the state where they practiced, but there was no way we could count them as members. But they were counting them toward membership. I think we still today have a pretty high, a very high percentage of physicians, and more academic physicians
More, right.
have joined.
Right.
And one of the things that we had worked on when I was president was that we wanted to have a committee set up to try to help with physicians who were on salary if they needed somebody to try to help make their contracts better or the terms of office better and this type of thing. And we did set up a committee like that, and they were active in a couple of cases where physicians were sort of being, well, they weren't being paid what they should have been paid for what they were doing.
Right. Now, other issues that came up during your term as president. For one thing, national health insurance sort of went away temporarily,
Yes.
didn't it?
I think even back then, all of a sudden, they realized that paying for it was the big problem. There was no way that it could be. Well, and I think the other thing too was that when you switch from Jimmy Carter to Ronald Reagan, that sort of pretty well killed it for a while. With the advent of Republican president.
Now, I remember one of the president's pages that you wrote, and it was about being a true physician. And you cited one of your friends, a past president of the state association. Would you care to mention him and sort of what kind of life he had and what kind of influence he might have had?
And this was Dr. R.L. Crawford from Lancaster, and he was another of the ones that sort of took me under his wing and helped me along. And he was always interested in trying to seek further education for himself and for others. And he did a tremendous amount for the town of Lancaster. And like, they never had any children, and yet he gave kids college educations without even expecting anything back.
Right.
In an effort to try to help them out. I mean, it's difficult to find people today that were of the character that he was, and the type person that was always giving and never expecting anything.
Yeah. Well, can you think about, in your term as president, whether there was anything that you would look back on and change what you might have done during that time?
Well, no, not a lot, I don't guess, because things were in a process of evolution, and they, but the same things that were going on then go on now, as far as trying to find a way to get people health care, and we would ask people to see at least one charity patient a day without paying, when today they're doing the same thing.
Right.
And in an effort to try to get people seen, and to try to get physicians to see Medicaid patients. And because this was something I would run into, that I used to treat them when I first started in practice for whatever they could pay. It may be 50 cents, it may be nothing.
Mm-hmm.
But with the advent of Medicaid, then they were able to, instead of going to the drugstore and asking for $1 worth of high blood pressure pills to last a month, they could go get the whole prescription.
Right.
And I think this has contributed tremendously to the longevity of our population, and particularly our poor type population, who now live as well, really medically, as others. But we would have tremendous difficulty in referring patients for certain specialties because they wouldn't see Medicaid.
Mm-hmm.
And yet it was free cash, and you know, I got a little bit upset with a lot of them, and would have a few words to say to them.
Yeah, well, I'm sure.
And
Another thing that I recall that you did, didn't you go around visiting some industries, talking to them about?
We were interested in trying to set up a physicians network, a type of HMO, or one of the prepaid type things, where we went out and talked to industry about trying to find out what their problems were with health insurance. Mm-hmm. And if particularly getting physicians to see workman's compensation claims, or do physical examinations for pre-employment, problems they were having with being able to insure the people.
Mm-hmm.
And we were in the process at that time of trying to set up a physicians network that would be available to these people. And we even were thinking about getting into the insurance, into self-insured type business. But the president after me didn't follow up on that, mm-hmm. So that sort of died.
Yeah. But
it was amazing that they were just flattered that somebody would come out and try to find out about their problem.
I'm sure they were. And during those years, are there any particular physicians or others that you would like to mention that were real helpful in doing things? I know there was many people. I don't know whether you have any specific. Oh
no, I think that we were a pretty close working and a pretty close-knit group of physicians that were running the State Medical Association at the time, and from Tucker Western and Wadestown and Harrison Peoples. And it was just, we would go to the AMA and as well as to the state part, and we were accused of being a clique, and I guess we were, but we were more interested than anybody else in what was happening. think that, you know, I feel grateful to those that were ahead of me and hope that we had some influence on
Sure.
the ones that followed.
I think that everybody sort of appreciates things like that when they look back at it.
Right.
Talking about being a clique here to begin with. All these guys going up there, well, nobody else is interested in going.
Nobody else would go.
That's it. It was time consuming and cost and
Right.
away from your practice, everything. Now, Governor Riley, you spoke with Governor Riley, in some way.
Right. Well, when Governor Riley came in, we had sat down and wrote out a basic health plan for that we wanted to present to him, and I was able to go over and meet with the governor and in his office, and we had almost an hour's meeting going over the health plan, and it was nothing really came of anything that we had asked. And I think it was because we had supported his opponent. But until the last year he was in office, and all of a sudden in the governor's address to the legislature, there was everything we had asked.
Maybe you just had to think about it a long time.
Well, it took 3 years, but
a lot of thinking.
But it showed up.
Well, that's right. It was his, during his term of governor, that they allowed 2 terms of governor.
That's right.
Right. Allowed the governor to have a second term and
And
he could be elected.
But he finally, I guess, saw the light and decided that he would go ahead and support it.
Well, now, tell me what you think of the main issues facing Madison today, and where do you see Madison heading? Well, that's an awfully difficult question right at the moment, but.
Well, I think that there are certain things that go back to when my cousin Bob Hemphill was in Congress and they were first starting to talk about Medicare and Medicaid. And he and I were talking, and he says, what do you think we ought to do? And I said, well, there is a need, and something's going to have to be done. But the thing I see is that you need to preserve the patient's right to choose their own physician. I said, because the doctor-patient relationship is something that is generally, has a lot to do with how the patient does in the patient's health. And that was one of the things that he had talked about. And I think now, with all the changes that they talk about coming in healthcare, that this is still a point that really should be made,
right,
that the patient should have their own choice of physician. Now, I think it's going to boil down to they're going to have a choice of these physicians who belong to this kind of plan.
Right.
But, and I think what they want to do is they want to get plans competing against each other to help lower the price. But hopefully the patients will still be able to see the doctor of their choice.
Well, you're sort of optimistic about the future of medicine.
Oh, yeah. I think it's going to be great. And I think that for all that they want to do, that the American public will only let them do so much before they don't want, it's all right to do it to them, but don't do it to me. And I still want my doctor, and I still want my hospital.
Yes.
So I think that's what will really end up being a deterrent to them in a certain moment, as far as how far they're going to go with it.
Well, now, let me ask you another thing about what do you do other than practice medicine now? I heard you say that you had to cover up your tomato plants last night.
Oh, I do a little vegetable gardening, and I think men can't have babies, but the closest to creating we can come is to put seed in the ground and watch it come up. Now, unfortunately, I don't have much time to deal with it, so I I grow weeds pretty well as well as vegetables. But I play golf and fish. They, also still interested in things that happen in town, and civic things that happen in town.
Right. Well, is there anything else that you can think of that we haven't covered that you might like to add? Just anything.
No, nothing in particular. It's just that, you know, I have enjoyed the years that I had in the State Medical Association, and it was a strain at times on my patients and on my family with all that was involved. But they were all very, very kind, and they were all, the patients were sitting there waiting when I get back. So, you know, it's always been very nice.
Well, I take it that you would do it all over again?
Yes, sir.
In a minute.
Right.
Well, Dr. Stone, I think this sort of conclude our interview, and I want to thank you for this on my behalf and on the behalf of the State Medical Association. I think this is a good project to put all these things in the state archives, and I hope that it'll be successful. I want to thank you again. Thank you very much for
Thank you.
doing this.
Appreciate it.